discovered China. In the late 19th century, during the Qing dynasty, farmers in Xiaotong village, Henan Province, found a new source of income. While farming, they discovered strange bones and shells carved with outlandish inscriptions and patterns. Experts confirmed these bones were in fact a precious ingredient in Chinese medicine called dragon bone. The farmers were thrilled. After centuries of farming, the dragon bones they discovered could help them afford a better life for their families. The farmers considered the discovery of the bones an omen from their forefathers. They would never have imagined that their discovery would unlock the doors to the history of China's Shang dynasty. As the news of the discovery spread, numerous archaeologists drew their attention to the village and began collecting the etched bones. It was speculated that the inscriptions might be a yet-to-be-identified system of writing. It was later dubbed the Anyang Oracle Bone Script. Experts deduced the characters on the bones from all other dynasties save one, the Shang dynasty. Historical records, the Shang dynasty was China's second dynasty, playing a significant role in Chinese history. Its capital had moved from place to place until finally settling in a city near Anyang called Yinshan. The inscribed bones and tortoise shells were unearthed from this region. In the past, Western scholars believed the emergence of the ancient Chinese text was no earlier than 800 BC. The question remained, will the emergence of the Oracle Bone Script push that conjecture back, and if so, by how many years? Few records about the Shang dynasty exist in history books. To better learn about this ancient culture, a closer inspection of the bones and tortoise shells was required. In 1928, Tsai Yuan-ping, Dean of the Chinese Academy of Science, led the first large-scale excavations. Tsai, a former Chinese Minister of Education, headmaster of Peking University, and the Dean of the Academy, was one of China's greatest contributors to the development of the education system. The biggest concern was trying to conclude whether the site was already plundered by grave robbers. The excavation process drew comparisons to chess. The site became the chessboard, as the archaeologists and the grave robbers were waging a battle. After further investigation and analysis of the landform patterns, experts concluded that the site was not yet discovered by grave robbers. However, soon after the excavation began, it did not look promising. Little was found along the original excavation route running from south to north across Xiaotung village. Criticism arose about the exaggerated value of this land. The archaeologists were not deterred, however, as they expanded their efforts northwest. At the end of the third excavation, more than 3,000 bone fragments and tortoise shells were unearthed. The archaeologists were thrilled. A bridge of cultural communication across 3,000 years was finally established. Between excavations, the archaeologists could not stop wondering what the people who carved on these shells and bones looked like thousands of years ago. One of the inscriptions read, "His Majesty has given us a task, and this is our life's mission. I, as a text recorder for the king, shall comply with his wishes and record the most ordinary things in life, as long as they were considered important by His Majesty. This is the meaning of our existence." The bones and shells were inscribed with detailed information concerning the living and economic conditions during the Shang dynasty. This proved to be a substantial cornerstone in the research of this period of China's history. Additional bones and shells have since been unearthed, their inscriptions covering military, daily life, production, crafts, divination, and other realms of existence. After word of the find spread, international media began covering the discovery. The small village suddenly became the focal point of the archaeological community. Yet, archaeologists like Zai Yuanpei were not easily satisfied. They believed beneath the earth lay a grand royal tomb from the Shang dynasty. Modern science and technology have created unlimited wealth for mankind, yet also provided tools for grave robbers. As excavations progressed, their scope gradually enlarged. This increased the risk of grave robberies. To prevent any damages, time was of the essence. 2 months after excavations began, villagers secretly dug out over 100 bones. Although this was stopped in time, the incident alarmed the archaeologists. They began working around the clock. Based on the inscriptions they unearthed, they determined the northwestern part of Xiaotung village was the tomb site. A senior archaeologist, Mr. Liang Seyong, was charged with the excavation project of the ancient tomb. In October 1934, an excavation worker noticed minor changes in the soil. They seemed to be traces of an excavation. This discovery raised two assumptions. First, there had to be something beneath the soil, perhaps the tomb's walls. Second, grave robbers might have beaten them to the tomb. Royal families or nobles, based on past experience, would build their tombs in hidden locations to prevent any damage. They would often build their tombs beneath other tombs. One excavation team continued digging, while another team began looking for a new excavation site. To reduce the possibility of damage, excavations were slowed down. After a few days of non-stop efforts, a tomb wall was uncovered. The archaeological team immediately mobilized all personnel to the dig. Unfortunately, traces of ancient grave robbers were also discovered. A great challenge was facing each and every archaeologist as they hoped to come out victorious against the thieves. The vertical excavation was complete. The archaeological team began expanding the horizontal excavation. 60 well-preserved tombs were later unearthed. Each contained the remnants of a human body and the remains of a sacrificial animal. It was the first time in 3,000 years that these relics saw the light of day. Contained a large number of extraordinarily crafted bronze, stone, and jade wares. This astonishing find proved that more than 3,000 years ago, people could craft such superb tools and wares. All the findings to this point indicated this must have been a royal tomb. Yet, due to the lack of written records, it was difficult to ascertain which emperor they belonged to. During the following 2 years, great breakthroughs were achieved. More than 1,200 small tombs were discovered, covering an area several times larger than previously expected. The discovery had shaken the academic community. Speculated that the varied and rich inscriptions might turn over a new leaf in the history of ancient Chinese characters. According to ancient Chinese traditions, the emperor's goods and slaves accompanied him into his tomb to serve him in the afterlife. This cruel tradition created these sacrificial tombs. As a testament of this tradition's cruelty, these tombs were called pits of corpses. According to their size and grade, the number of people buried ranged from 1 to 39. Women buried aged between 25 to 30 years old. Children aged 6 to 10. Most of the bodies that were recovered were in nearly pristine condition. A large number of beheaded men were found buried, ranging between 15 to 35 years old. Evidently, the treatment was different according to the gender and age. It was said the emperors feared their male slaves would rebel against them in the underworld and ordered them beheaded. All of these elements are detailed in the oracle bone script. It was possible that those who recorded these unique historic records were also buried in the tomb. To the Shang emperors, they were mere talking animals capable of recording their history. Yesterday, His Majesty went to the other world. Following his orders, I recorded everything, including the mass slaughters. Maybe I would go along with His Majesty. After all, my mission in this world is complete. As the excavation was progressing, more and more tombs were unearthed. As expected, more brutal massacres were exposed. During the excavation, the archaeological team discovered a huge cache of bones and tortoise shells. These are known today as the H127 bone pit. An even better insight into the ancient Shang dynasty was gained from this cache. On top of the bone heaps laid a well-preserved male body. He did not appear to have been killed. It seemed as if he had volunteered to sacrifice his own life. This find surprised the archaeologists. After deciphering the inscriptions, they found that the bones covered vast records. Who was this man, and why was he found in this particular place? There was no sign of murder. Unable to find related inscriptions concerning the man's death, his identity remains a mystery. Many ventured guesses that from his peaceful expression, he probably chose not to leave such valuable historical records and elected to guard them forever. This kind of happy ending is always preferable to reality. However, such beautiful ending in the barbarian and cruel Shang dynasty were not recorded in those inscriptions. Most of the cultural relics unearthed were well preserved. Scientists were eventually able to date the earliest Chinese characters back 3,300 years ago. This discovery refuted the former claim by 500 years. China's cultural history was once again sending shockwaves around the world. The excavation scope had broadened greatly, covering the northwestern parts of Beijing, Tianjin, and northern Henan Province. After over half a century of exploration, the 30-square-kilometer relics of the capital city, Yinshan, were exposed. During this long process, numerous bronze, jade, and stonewares were discovered. A famous find was the massive Sumu cauldron. Its sheer size was a casting miracle, and all indications show that even more massive bronze wares were yet to be found. It was astounding to find that more than 3,000 years ago, casting capabilities could reach such high levels. The late Shang dynasty's scientific and social development had reached even the most prolific of dynasties, such as the Xia and Zhou dynasties. Unearthed inscriptions, Yinsheng, the name of the underground city, was manifest. After being unearthed, it was renamed Yinshu, meaning the ruins of Yinsheng. From the city's relics, this brutal yet highly developed society can still be seen. As the world awaits new discoveries, what mysteries of China's origins will be exposed next?